know you would like to some kind of way extract something out of this bottle, all right, that's not there. It's not there. You all speculate and create things, and then you want people to respond to it. So you can ask the bottle, but don't ask me.
Hello, and welcome to all of you out there in podcast land. My name is Clint Childers, and across from me is the Georgia Peach himself, Mitch Davis.
How you doing, man? Ready to talk about week one?
Yes, I am very ready to talk about week one. It was pretty exciting for a week one.
I would say so.
Yeah, like they definitely set us up pretty well with some good games. Like we said last week, some cupcakes, some like G5 teams, but overall pretty exciting.
Absolutely. We got our fair share of cupcakes, fair share of thrillers, some unlikely thrillers.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, before we get into the week one action, we should probably do a little housekeeping.
Definitely.
Last podcast episode, I gave the wrong email address to write us in the entire episode. So I'm going to correct myself now. The email address is askthebottlecast@gmail.com. That's askthebottlecast@gmail.com. You can write us in all your questions, comments, complaints, answers to questions.
Yeah.
All that good stuff, you can write us in there.
I'm sure we missed out on thousands of emails last week, so I guess that's just something we're going to have to do.
They're all piling up in some poor guy's email address. He's like, who are these people? No, you can also follow us on Twitter at askthebottle. Shout out to whoever took Ask the Bottle on Twitter. Can we please have it? No. We are Ask the Bottle. That's Ask D-A Bottle, like Ask the Bottle.
Gives a little flair.
Yeah, a little fun, inject a little fun. And of course, you can always listen to us and subscribe on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts, which is hopefully where you're listening to us right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into week one. Real quick before we get into the SEC, want to go ahead and talk about some games that happened around the country that were pretty exciting.
All right.
Let's just drop into it. Baylor loses to Liberty in Matt Rule's first game as head coach. Not a good start for him.
Yikes. Yeah.
I don't know if you contribute that to suspensions or coaching, but whatever. But, not a great start for him and Baylor, that's for sure. Lamar Jackson in Louisville went to Purdue. Got a little bit of a scare there. Kind of makes us wonder if it's the same Louisville team that we saw last year.
Yeah, I thought that one was going to go the other way.
I did as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but so it'll be interesting to watch the Louisville saga as we continue. Indiana and Ohio State looked pretty good for a while there, but I think the OSU depth and speed kind of took over.
Yeah, they did kind of the Northern Bama thing where it was like, oh, maybe this can be a good game. Oh, nope, definitely not.
Yeah, Indiana built an early 14-6 lead over Ohio State, but wide receiver Simi Cobbs Jr., 11 completions for 149 yards for Indiana. Great way to start, but again, the talent advantage in Ohio State, the speed, the depth. Halftime adjustments, which is what Meyer's known for, came through for him. Ended up winning 49-21 over the Hoosiers in Indiana. West Virginia and Virginia Tech, fantastic game. Offensive expose, you could say. Not a ton of turnovers. West Virginia had one pick early in the second quarter. Defense not really in this game. Florida transfer QB Will Grier went 31 of 53 for 371 yards. That's a great performance.
But they miss him.
Yeah, well, taking a year off, you think maybe there's some rust to shake off, but he did pretty well. Virginia Tech QB Josh Jackson looks just like Gerard Evans, man. Big guy, can run the football. He was actually the leading rusher on the day. 101 yards on 11 carries and a TD on the ground.
All right.
Great performance for him, too. But the Mountaineers couldn't really pull it off. Ended up losing by a touchdown. Made a great fourth quarter push for the end zone.
It was close.
No, incomplete pass. Ended up giving VT the win.
And he had him in the end zone, right? The play before that?
Oh, yeah.
Threw it a little low.
Yep. And I think that maybe the biggest surprise, Texas and Maryland. Yeah.
Terps.
The Terps coming through. DJ Durkin looks to be really, it's week one. It's a little early to say, but he looks to be really moving that program forward.
Yeah.
What does that say about Tom Herman at Texas and Todd Orlando, the defensive coordinator? They should have had him ready for that Terps offense.
I agree. 51 points, that's kind of speaks for itself. I don't know if it's, going to take, I think it's going to take some time to rebuild. Donta Foreman's gone. You just have changes on the roster and the coaching staff. It's just crazy. We're still seeing Texas just drop these games, so I don't really have anything.
Yeah, I know. Well, this game seems like it's kind of one out of an alternate reality because both of the first passes thrown in the game were pick sixes, right? Or they were picked. Only one was a pick six. Both teams had a blocked field goal return for a touchdown, and the game included 4 missed field goals, 2 missed 2-point conversions, and 4 return touchdowns. That's like special teams limbo. Like the game is totally decided by special teams. It's like offense just wasn't. I mean, it wasn't the main scoring drive in that game, which is really weird. But anyways, yeah, Texas made some mental mistakes. 11 penalties for 117 yards, 2 turnovers. That's gonna kill you all day long.
Every time, doesn't matter who you're playing. Well, to a certain extent.
Yeah. Well, so I guess question to all of you, is Texas really back?
I think they're on their way back. Maybe.
I
don't know.
It's week 1. Like, it's hard to make, strong conclusions on a team, but
yeah. Well, it's one of those things where it's like, do you say, man, Texas really doesn't have it together, or is it like, hey, like Maryland?
Yeah, right. Well, I think
it's not that bad.
I agree with you. I think we need to give all the credit to Maryland. I mean, they played a great ball game. Well, moving into the SEC, which is what all of our listeners want to hear about.
Where it matters more.
Where it just means more.
You're right.
Copyright.
I didn't want to get copyright slapped.
Cool. Well,
that was our off-brand.
That's our off-brand version. Yeah. Our Ask the Bottle version. Well, let's go ahead and start with Florida and Michigan.
Let's go ahead. All right. What a game. Definitely not... it was sort of kind of like what I expected, also very much not. First of all, first half, second half, completely different.
Absolutely.
It felt sort of like Florida had something really positive going in the first half, especially on defense. You had 2 back-to-back pick sixes, the blocked punt. I don't know, man. It was a crazy game. I really thought, like, wow, this is going to be a close one, but Florida's offense just looked awful. They looked completely anemic. 0 touchdowns on the offensive side. I think the whole quarterback carousel that's been happening at Florida since Tebow was around, that we mentioned in our preview, is being felt still. Starting Felipe Franks and then pulling him after the just some mistakes was pretty rough.
Yeah, the suspensions definitely hurt him, especially with Scarlett being gone.
Scarlett being gone was awful. They only managed, 11 yards on 27 carries, which is an average of 0.4 yards a carry team-wide. Leading rusher Mark Thompson, I think he had 5. He only rushed 5 times for 13 yards.
Yeah, that's not acceptable.
Anyway, the ground game was non-existent. Felipe Franks had a really bad fumble in the third quarter. He looked all right on a couple throws. He had a really nice deep ball to Josh Hammond that kind of broke things open early, but yeah, the O-line looked bad. They allowed 6 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. Defense looked good. Like I said, those 2 pick sixes in the second quarter, it seemed kind of like, hey, maybe this is just going to be a momentum game. But the defense just, they're not good enough to pick up the slack of an offense that's playing that poorly. Yeah, they let loose a lot of big run plays. Michigan was kind of able to run pretty consistently. They still had 11 tackles for loss on Florida side. The thing is, I feel like the defenses were matched up, but the offenses were extremely mismatched.
You're absolutely right about that. And the coach, like you said earlier, not to backtrack, but the quarterback carousel thing, it's one thing to try out different quarterbacks in a week 1 game. Against the Michigan defense is the wrong time for that to happen.
Absolutely.
Find a guy and just let him play the game. If you keep swapping in and out, that didn't work for Auburn last year. It's not going to work for Florida this year.
No way.
Especially not against that defense.
Absolutely not. And just some bad mistakes that kind of sealed the deal. The fumble on the kickoff in the third quarter. Zaire fumbled in the end zone.
Yeah, that was kind of in garbage time.
Yeah,
but it still just kind of iced the game out.
It just made it. It took it from a point of like, okay, like maybe we were a little underprepared to, wow, this is really going off the rails.
Yeah.
Michigan just won because they're a more balanced football team. I personally think that, like we've talked about, we both agree on this, Florida needs to stick with somebody. I like Zaire because of the experience, but I understand wanting to kind of mold Franks. They're gonna struggle until they commit. They might struggle either way. It's looking like Franks is gonna remain the starter. They ought to be able to adjust over Northern Colorado. I think that should have been the game where they, like you said, tried somebody out.
Absolutely.
Next week, it should be fine.
Yeah.
It's just going to be interesting to see if they can get something going.
That's a rough. I mean, against a good Big Ten team in Michigan is a rough way to start the season.
Oh, absolutely. And Spate was on. I mean, other than the pick sixes,
other than the only 2 times Florida scored. Yeah, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. And when you start a freshman quarterback against just right into the teeth of that defense, he's going to do things like fumble the ball and throw wacky passes. But what can you do?
What can you do? Anyway, rough week for Florida. They got a cupcake next week, so
we'll see. We'll see what adjustments they make for sure.
I think it'll be just as interesting because they should, just roll. But if they don't, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Well, let's move back to the West.
All right.
In my opinion, this was the best game of week 1. Texas A&M, UCLA. Looked really promising for Texas A&M for a long time.
Seriously.
For a long time. Ended up losing to 45-44 to the Bruins. Not a good way to start off the season for Kevin Sumlin and the Aggies.
It was 44-10 at one point.
44-10. And according to ESPN, that's the second largest comeback in college football history.
Was the last one? It was in 2006.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, yeah.
I saw that stat online and wanted to throw that out there because if so, that's very impressive.
Oh yeah, I mean it's insane.
Like I said, real tough loss for Kevin Sumlin. The UCLA offense, they just were determined, man. I mean, even when they were down 44-10, they just kept on going. They kept on pushing. They ended up just wearing that defense out.
And they didn't score, so it was 44-10.
Right.
They didn't score another touchdown after that point until the end of the third quarter. That's when they started chipping away at the lead.
So it's essentially what you're saying is it's a 34-point comeback in 15 minutes.
Of
football,
more or less.
What you're saying. Well, I mean that is the whole story again. I mean, it's a career game for Josh Rosen. Definitely. I mean, that's going to be a turning point in his legacy. I think missed most of the year last year. He went 35 of 59 for 491 yards and 4 touchdowns in the air. That is incredible.
Yeah,
great performance from him. Nick Starkel, freshman quarterback for Texas A&M, ended up leaving the game late in the third quarter. He had a foot injury, so that put in Kellen Mond, true freshman, in his place. He was pretty inefficient. Mond went for 3 for 17 for just 27 yards.
And I mean, to me, that's the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta think that Starkel would have at least put him in field goal range, got him another touchdown. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. The A&M passing attack could be pretty rough. They passed for 89 yards total as a team. No. It's not very good. They're going to have to lean on the run game, which they did. Their 44 points came entirely from the running game. Travion Williams went 203 yards and 22 carries. It's an average of 9.5 yards a carry.
Woo!
Great day for him. Absolutely. He put on a clinic on running the football. Like I said, the opposite for UCLA. They got 491 yards in the air. So you could say 2 completely different offenses here. The UCLA defense was in the backfield, man, of Texas A&M all day. 6 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. It's a good performance from the front 7 right there. There's really nothing much to say about this team except for Jim Mora finally did it, man. He brought them back from, like you said, 34 points down, and Texas A&M goes back to College Station next week for a much-needed week 2 against Nicholls State, so not really a formidable opponent there. They'll be able to kind of go back to the drawing board and see what they can do moving forward. Nick Starkel's going to have surgery on his foot, so he's out indefinitely. Looks like Kellen Mond's going to be the man. So they're going to have to figure out an offensive game plan with him. He can run the football pretty well. It's just they're going to have to find some sort of passing attack to help out their run game.
Absolutely, and that's if it was a quick turnaround for Starkel, I'd have to say there's nothing to worry about. Now it's kind of like, all right, strap in,
absolutely. But yeah, I don't think they should have any problem handling Nicholls State week 2. That should continue to roll with the running game behind Travion Williams. Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting to see how Kellen Mond again handles his first complete start at quarterback.
Yeah.
But I think they should have no problem in College Station next week.
He's lucky it's not flipped. I mean,
absolutely.
If they were playing UCLA week 2, it'd be like, well, good luck, bud.
We could have there could be no comeback at all. We could have just a completely different game on our hands. Seriously. Absolutely. But yeah, that was a great game. I watched 100% of that game. That was maybe the only game of the week that I actually got to watch the whole thing, just from accentuating circumstances.
Like as it was happening?
Absolutely.
Right, yeah.
It was. I had totally counted out the Bruins, but they came back and proved me wrong, man. It was a great game.
All right. Well, back over to the East, we're going to be talking about Georgia and Appalachian State. Tough break right out of the gate. Jacob Eason left the game in the first with a left knee ligament sprain. He's listed as week to week, but he's definitely presumed out against Notre Dame next week. I was watching the game, and as a Georgia fan, I was bummed out. I was like, great, of course. Our second-year guy, comes right out of the gate and gets hurt in basically a cupcake. I know App State's been, upset people before, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But, the first 3 drives were punts, and they didn't even get into App State territory until Jake Fromm came in and started playing. Now, I don't think that Fromm, it could have been a lot of things. They only gave Eason 3 passing attempts before he got hurt. But it was just interesting the fact that, when Fromm came in, things kind of livened up a little bit and things started to break down. And again, it could be because App State doesn't have a lot of depth. It could be a lot of things. But that was just an interesting takeaway for me. Run game, Nick Chubb looked great. He looked faster. He looked quick. He looked decisive, especially in the red zone on the goal line. He ended up 15 carries for 96 yards, 6.4 yards a carry, and 2 touchdowns. And again, on the Eason series, on the Eason drives, he didn't look that great. His first carries, got tackled for loss. And just nothing was really happening. And then Fromm comes in and starts kind of slinging it like a crazy person. And all of a sudden, we got a game.
Well, you could also attribute that to just maybe the rest of the offense kind of loosening up.
It's true.
You don't want to take anything away from Jacob Eason. We know he can play, but it's tough when you go down early. But the offense might have been warming up. It's week 1. You put the younger guy in there, and suddenly they're all loosey goosey and they're ready to go. And he has a more comfortable offense to throw to.
Absolutely. That's why I was kind of being a bit cautious about it, because I'm not going to make some sweeping claim that, oh my gosh, right. Because I had some issues with Fromm that I'll discuss. But yeah, I thought it was interesting, the timing, but I totally agree that, it was the first quarter of the first game of the year. And I'll end it by saying Fromm was placed under pretty good circumstances.
Right.
But he definitely came out. He looked like he wasn't expecting to play, but he looked good. He made some questionable throws, which I'll get to in a minute. But anyway, back to the run game. Of course, Sony looked great as well. Really great in the open field. He had a really nice, long 44-yard run. He went 16 carries for 87, 5.4 yards a carry, and a touchdown. I love that they were using him in the Wildcat. I thought that's something that suits his skill set very well, and I feel like it's really beneficial for Georgia to have a player that's dynamic like that. DeAndre Swift showing some nice depth. He played well as well. Anyway, back to so obviously the big play was the deep ball from Fromm to Javon Wims. That was a rough throw. He threw basically a jump ball, and Wims just out-jumped the other guy, caught it, and came down with it. Fromm threw a lot of dangerous passes, kind of like that. He was sort of throwing some lobs, some moon balls.
Just throwing the bouquet up and telling his receivers to go get it.
Right. He went 10 for 15 with 143 and a touchdown. But I think the bigger takeaway is that Javon Wims looked awesome. He only caught the ball 3 times for 81 yards and a touchdown. But
3 receptions for 81 yards is a good day.
It's
even
good.
If you only catch the ball 3 times.
But it speaks to the fact that he played really well. He looked good, and but this is a run first team. Yeah. It doesn't really matter who's. It's especially that way with Fromm in there. But it's a run first team. I think the UGA receivers in general showed real improvement. Some good hands for the most part. DeAndre Swift looks like a capable passing down back. He made a really nice catch on just another a moon ball to the sideline from Fromm. But anyway, I'm a little worried about Fromm. I think next week at Notre Dame is going to be a huge challenge. He cannot keep making those questionable throws. He was just slinging it into coverage, and a better defense is going to take advantage of that. He didn't look as bad as Bryce Ramsey, though, who came in, threw 2 passes, both picked off, and that was it. So, Georgia defense looked good. 2 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. Trenton Thompson is the guy. He had 6 tackles, 3 solo, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss. It looked good.
Yeah, he ran that front seven pretty much.
Yeah, I was expecting a few more turnovers. They just had the one forced fumble, but it didn't recover it. But, the front seven looked good. Completely stopped the run game. App State's leading rusher, 2.9 yards a carry. They were a little susceptible to Lamb. The App State quarterback kind of ran on him a little bit. 10 carries for 66 yards. And they got Brandon Wimbush coming up at Notre Dame, who's a mobile quarterback. So it was a little concerning to see them sort of give up, points that way. But, I mean, again, it's late in the game. You got, subs in. You got stuff like that. I just think that's something to watch out for. It's going to be a tough game next week going on the road. I had said in my preview this was going to be sort of the real statement game. And now that Fromm is starting, it's going to be an interesting game to watch. I'd be curious to know if the run defense can stay strong and handle Josh Adams and Dexter Williams at Notre Dame, who combined for 285 yards. Granted, it was against Temple, but I just think they're going up against a strong offense next week, and I think the defense is really going to have to step up. I do think Fromm has the tools to succeed. I just think he needs to tighten up, calm down, be a little more patient, not throw some of those questionable balls, that I just hope he doesn't get overconfident. Obviously I think he's a great prospect, but I just don't want him to get overconfident and think that, those plays are going to work against better cornerbacks and better coverage. Yeah. So I think, next week, I think if Georgia can generate some turnovers and the defense can stay strong, I think they might be able to edge them out. I'm calling Georgia 24-17 over Notre Dame. But it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I think Georgia will end up coming away with the victory. You talk about Fromm throwing up those deep balls like that and just having his receivers go get them. Notre Dame's secondary was less than impressive last year. We'll see what they can do, but pretty excited about that one.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about that one. That's going to be a great football game. Let's move back to the West.
Let's do it.
Let's move to, what had to be, billed to be the marquee game of week 1.
Absolutely.
The marquee game of for a while, I think. Alabama and Florida State obviously played in the new Mercedes-Benz. Is it Stadium?
Stadium.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium in down there in Atlanta.
Yeah.
This was just another Alabama game.
Just a complete wear down. We were talking national championship style, scoring, but I'll let you take it away, but it comes down to Francois.
It does.
That was a tough break.
It does. Well, you had said, I want to harken back to something you had said last week. You said that this is going to be one of those games that has a great first half, and then the wheels come off in the second half, and you could not have been more right. At the half, it was 10-7.
Great.
Alabama over FSU. You're like, all right, this is exactly what I was looking for. And then the wheels just came off for Florida State in the second half. Didn't score another point in the ballgame. That's it.
It's rough.
Yeah, obviously the biggest news, DeAndre Francois is out for the season with a patella tendon injury. That is not good for Florida State.
That's a rough injury
a rough draw, man.
It's obviously all season.
Yeah.
I hope he comes back all right next season.
Yeah, I hope he can. I hope he can come back and be who he was destined to be this season. But that's definitely we're gonna have to see how that hurts Florida State down the stretch. They were one of my playoff teams.
Oh,
so we'll see how that ends up working out for me. But let's get something straight here before. I don't want to talk too bad about FSU because that defense came to play.
Yeah, it could have been way worse.
Absolutely.
Given the circumstances, but anyway.
That defense was locked and loaded, man. Held that Alabama offense just to 10 points in the first half, which is a great performance. But the thing is, it was turnovers for FSU. They had a fumble on a kick return, threw 2 interceptions. And, Francois just made mistakes in the second half under pressure, tried to force the ball into some double coverages, places he shouldn't have been throwing the football. And to me, it was the Alabama floodgate, which is when, if you're a team who's playing Alabama and you start to make those mistakes, Alabama starts to smell blood.
Oh,
and the fear gets in your mind, and if you keep making those mistakes, you cannot. It's almost like some kind of weird voodoo black magic thing that happens.
Right.
Teams they had that fumble, then they threw 2 interceptions, and all that happened in the second half.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm saying. It's just like teams, especially in the special teams, that's where it kills you. The special teams mistakes. Alabama can capitalize on those.
Something just as flippant enough as the kick fumble. I feel like we've seen it happen so many times where teams do something like that really just happens sometimes. You can't really predict it. and the guy muffs a kick, and then it's like they're just like demoralized after
Absolutely,
that.
yeah. And it seems like it affects the whole team.
Yeah.
But Jalen Hurts, kind of compared DeAndre Francois, their performances. Jalen Hurts was 10 of 18 for 96 yards and a touchdown. It's pretty decent in the air. Francois was 19 of 33 for 210 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. This is not as good, obviously. But the thing is, Alabama doesn't seem like they have to throw the ball too much this year.
No.
They got it done offensively behind a really healthy offensive line. Damian Harris, Bo Scarborough, and Jalen Hurts all combined for 168 yards on the ground. And Damian Harris averaged 8 yards a carry.
Again,
on 9 carries.
You look at that, though, and it's not huge numbers. I mean, it's awesome statistically, but, I mean, they really didn't have to do a lot.
They didn't. I mean, when your defense is holding, when your defense is putting pressure on Francois, making him make bad throws.
Great field position.
All you got to do is just run the ball, run the clock down. Maybe if you score, you can score, but, they all had to do is score 24 points. They could have scored 8 points and won. But
you're right. You're right.
24. Next week Bama goes home to face Fresno State in Tuscaloosa. Should be a super easy week 2 game for them. Good opportunity for Hurts to get back out there and run around and get the ball to their running backs a little bit more, and that defense can kind of. I mean, you can never rest on teams, but they don't have to play as hard against I think a Fresno State team. They can kind of just get out there and have some fun.
If I was going to give any advice to anybody on the Fresno State football team, I would just say, just don't worry about it. Just have a good time.
Just go out there and watch your head.
I think and maybe obviously, I don't know what's going on inside the players' heads, but I think that's the mindset going into Alabama is, okay, we cannot make mistakes. We can make 0 mistakes. So when you make one, you're already kind of like, well, we made a mistake against Alabama, so we're going to lose.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I would go in being like, hey, we're going to make mistakes, obviously. Let's just do our thing.
Absolutely. Well, let's make our way back over to the East.
All right. A very interesting game, basketball score type of game. Missouri State. Missouri ended up winning 72-43.
Wow.
That's a lot of points.
That is a poorly played basketball game. You know what I mean?
Very lopsided.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe high school game. My biggest takeaway, offense, obviously. I'm gonna go ahead and say bold claim. I think Mizzou might be the only team in the East that's really ready to throw the ball. That's really ready to just air it out.
Well, you said last week they're bringing everybody back.
So many receivers.
There are no new pieces at all. So it should just be like bloop plop. You just take the offense from last year and stick it right in this year, and that seems to be pretty much the same case we had last year.
Absolutely. It was just like a point fest. Drew Lock set an SEC record with 7 touchdowns. He went 21 for 34 with 521 yards and 1 pick.
It's amazing that he only threw 1 pick.
I know.
Like, really, all of that yardage, and he only threw 1 interception.
Well,
That's
it
great.
felt like a video game, where you get somebody the ball and then they're gone. There they go.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was just wild, man. I think my biggest issue was I don't think that he should have had to be in the game long enough to throw for that many yards.
Absolutely.
I think the fact that it was pretty much a game for a while. It
Yeah.
should not have been a game and a half. It should have been like, all right, let's get our guys, our second, third strings in.
Well, I think that Missouri defense is looking about exactly as we thought it would.
Right. Well,
Really.
yeah, and I mean, but I'll just round out the offense. On the ground, Crockett did great as we had projected. He had 18 carries for 202 yards, 11.2 yards a carry, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, the offense not only looks great through Locke, it looks balanced. Jamon Moore, who I had said, would be great if he would just kind of settle it down. He ended up going 4 catches for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns. They had 2 guys receiving-wise go over 100 yards. It was really solid. They ended up spreading the ball around a lot, which I think is something that also some SEC East teams might struggle with. That O-line, like I had said, is stacked. They allowed 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss in a huge kind of, game where a lot of points were scored. It was nice to see, just that, I don't know, it's just nice to see Locke have a lot of time. The offense looks balanced. I will say, as much as, we want to throw shade at Missouri's defense, they did only hold Missouri State to 1 score in the second half, which obviously, you're dealing with a team with much more limited recruiting. Guys are tired. It's a bit easier to do that, but I still thought it was impressive. Defense had 4 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. They still allowed 11.3 yards per carry from Missouri State's leading rusher, who rushed for 124 yards. But they forced 3 fumbles. They recovered 1. They had a pick. Interesting thing, of all the points scored, Missouri State still dominated as far as time of possession goes. They had the ball for 38 minutes.
Yeah, I was looking at that stat too, and that to me speaks really well to Missouri's offense.
I agree. Efficient.
I mean, yeah, that's what you're spending 20 minutes on the field and you're scoring 72 points. I mean, that's a lot of times up and down the field.
Right.
But I mean, they got to get that defense off the field.
They got to. But I will say, in a conference that's dominated usually by defense, their games are going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to watch Missouri play football this year. I personally think that the defense isn't always going to look like this. The second half was encouraging. On the whole, I liked the Mizzou that I saw. I think that they're trending in the right direction. I mean, to be an offensive powerhouse in the East right now, I think is a valuable thing. Them playing the Gamecocks next week could not be a better. Just if we're just talking SEC East play, I mean, that could not be a better game in my opinion. I think it's going to be really close. I think the fact that Missouri was able to really ball out on offense means that they're going to end up edging them out. I'm calling 35-27 next week.
I think that's probably accurate. It'll be interesting to see, 2 SEC East teams in week 2 playing. Usually we get a couple of weeks in, guys can work out their schemes and their players, but we're getting two teams thrown in at each other with only one game under their belt. Obviously, South Carolina had that NC State game, a little bit more high profile game than Missouri State, but it'll be interesting to see them go at it. I think it'll be a good game as well.
Absolutely. So that's all I have on that game. Swinging it back over to the West.
Cool. Well, safe to say Dave Aranda is going to have another great year as defensive coordinator of LSU. At least what we can see from the BYU game. LSU just edges out BYU 27-0.
Woo! Just barely.
Just barely. Just barely got through to him. That LSU secondary was just lights out
fast
against the BYU passing attack. We talked about their speed last week.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. There you have it. That's what they do.
And I want to point out, BYU doesn't suck.
No.
They were 9-4 last year.
In no way are they a bad team.
No.
Tanner Mangum, QB, he's experienced. They've got experienced offense.
Right.
They should have been able to score points, but the defense is just that good.
They beat Michigan State last year, Mississippi State. They beat Arizona. This wasn't as much of a cupcake as it looked like in the box score.
No, yeah, Tanner Mangum, quarterback for BYU, he completed only 50% of his passes for just 101 yards, no touchdowns, and he threw a pick.
Oof.
Which is, that's all that secondary. They're lights out. The defense, the front seven, they sacked Mangum 3 times, and they had 3 tackles for loss, obviously living in the backfield. They held the BYU rushing game to literal non-existence. The team total was -5 yards on 14 carries. Oh. They're in the negatives of. They ran backwards literally.
Oh, I'm looking at it. The longest carry was 6 yards.
That's monster.
Yeah,
that's monster. This LSU Alabama game's looking better already. I'm already ready for it.
That was one of my favorites when we were talking previews.
Oh yeah,
as it always is.
The BYU run defense on the other side is completely. I don't know if this is Darius Geis or their defense, but they allowed 296 yards on the ground for LSU.
Man.
So Darius Geis is still just as good as we remember. He was 122 of those yards, 27 carries, and scored 2 touchdowns.
Solid. It's solid. I will say, it's not any of these crazy numbers like that we're throwing. It's still 4.5 yards a carry, but it's against a better team supposedly.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest surprise for the LSU offense was Danny Etling.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how Danny Etling's not very good. Well, he must have listened because he totally proved me wrong. He went 14 for 17 for 171 yards, and he averaged 10 yards a throw, which is perfectly fine.
All he's got to do is set up Geis and Darrell Williams. And that's all that matters.
They only threw the ball 17 times.
Yeah.
In the game.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Great opening performance for both sides of the ball for LSU.
Yeah.
Just exactly what I think LSU fans needed to see. They're going to play UT Chattanooga next week. Should continue their defensive dominance, give their offense a chance to kind of stretch their legs. They ought to have no problem in Baton Rouge with UTC.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about setting your DVR on that one.
No, you might
just watch highlights.
You might spend some time with the family during that game. All right,
squeeze in that doctor's appointment.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move back to the East then.
Back to the East. So I'm going to be talking about South Carolina, NC State, which was fascinating.
Yeah, great. Totally. We did not give this game any time last week, and we
really
totally
didn't.
should have, because this game was great.
Absolutely. I think it could have gone in just either way. Mm-hmm. I mean, it came down to, I thought NC State outplayed South Carolina on offense on the whole. The defense just couldn't go the distance. They made just a few more mistakes. The QB Finley played great. Deebo Samuel, though, on the South Carolina side is that's who really the person we need to talk about.
Talk about like out of nowhere. Who was talking about this guy?
He was solid a year ago. It was just kind of like, last year. I mean, it was sort of like he was the bright spot on a roster that didn't really have a lot of playmakers. Now they got some guys that can help them out, and I mean, you could just let them shine.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that opening kickoff, I was like, well,
yeah,
there's your guy.
You know what? If you start a game with running the kickoff back, pretty good sign.
We were talking about demoralizing. That's
no kidding. That's a stunner.
And then Bentley just threw that just gorgeous rope to him. But again, I really don't think, I mean, if it weren't for Deebo Samuel running that kickback and then just one hand snagging that in the right corner of the end zone, I don't think South Carolina would have won this game.
Yeah.
The run game was pretty terrible. Rico Dowdle went 12 carries for 27 yards. He did score. He made up for it as a receiver. He had 2 receptions for 51 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, I don't know. That kind of surprised me a little bit. I know I didn't really tout him much in my preview, but they definitely got to get that going. As far as quarterback play goes, Jake Bentley looked good. He looked good. He looked capable, I'll say that. He definitely was able to score. He went 17 for 29 with 3 touchdowns and a pick. Pick was pretty bad. He was just trying to force another big Deebo play, and it just didn't work. So, I think it kind of showed a little weakness there as far as, like, okay, well, how many playmakers does this team really have? Do they have enough to get it done? But, I guess it won't really matter too much because they're playing Missouri, then Louisiana Tech, and then A&M. So, I mean, it's not like they're playing – A&M will be a struggle, but, I mean, they're not going to be playing any great defenses anytime soon.
Yeah. You don't sleep on that Louisiana Tech defense, though.
Oh, really?
I got a couple things about them later on. Don't sleep on them. They're better than people like to give them credit for.
Okay.
But you're right. I think – Deebo Samuel obviously seems to be a god of football. If Bentley can throw easy catchable balls to him, they should have no problem scoring points. We'll just have to see if teams moving forward start to really target him.
Right.
Throw 1 or 2 safeties on him if he starts to go deep. We'll see how that ends up working out.
That was my only, bit of hesitancy as far as like, I think Bentley looked really good. I just hope that they can utilize some other guys. It was one of those games kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where it was like, do we come away with it thinking, man, NC State's better than we thought, or do we come away thinking that South Carolina, maybe pretty easy to beat? It's sort of like, did they do just enough, or did NC State just barely fall short? And I really think South Carolina just did enough. Yeah. I think that they're playing a good team. I think that NC State's defense just couldn't quite get the job done. South Carolina did good. They limited their mistakes to just the 1 pick. I think this game is a big tone setter as far as Muschamp goes as a coach. The defense had 4 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. O-line only allowed 2 sacks. They just got to run block better. I mean, they had 7 tackles for loss against them. NC State, again, dominated possession for 36 minutes as opposed to South Carolina's 24. And they dominated first downs. They had 29. South Carolina had 12. I think that... I just think that makes it interesting as far as, NC State got it done on offense. Just, I don't know if they got it done on defense. So I think what we're coming up with, like I had said before, Mizzou, South Carolina is just going to be a shootout.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you're right about one thing. Will Muschamp definitely had that team ready for week 1.
Yeah.
Definitely a good thing, given their performance last season. It seems like he's made some good, offseason adjustments, and seems like he's got good control of that team right now.
The seat is cooling off a little bit after that. I think
always helps to win against a P5 opponent week 1.
Right.
That always helps cool things off.
And I think it was one of those things where they lose the game, the seat gets really hot, but they won. The game, cools off a little bit. I think, SEC fans want to see, a 2-3 score win, but it was a super entertaining. Again, NC State is a good team. South Carolina just had a bit better defense. I still think Mizzou's got the edge next week, though.
All right, well, let's go ahead and go back to the West. Let's rattle off some of these games. We didn't have many more good games than that in the SEC. A lot of FCS teams, like we said, some G5 teams. A lot of good performances, but let's go ahead and try to get through these. Arkansas and Florida A&M played in Little Rock to a very small crowd. Bad weather on a Thursday night. Not a great opponent, but really bad draw for Arkansas fans in Little Rock. But the Hogs ended up coming away with victory over the Rattlers 49-7, which is about what you'd expect from a week 1 game like this.
Yeah, it was worrisome, and then it was like, oh, it's no problem.
Exactly. Well, Florida A&M got penalized with maybe the weirdest thing. I've never seen anything like this. They got penalized for wearing illegal jerseys.
Yeah, that was weird.
It was a white jersey with white numbers with an orange outline. It didn't seem like too difficult for me to read, but I'm not the officials. They got docked a timeout every quarter that they wore the jerseys. I've never seen that penalty actually enacted before, so that was definitely interesting for me. But let's talk about the actual football that was played. Quarterback Austin Allen for Arkansas came out very shaky, not very good. He went 14 for 19 for 135 yards, threw a pick on his first drive.
Bad pick.
Yeah, not great. Pass protection is still a huge issue with this offense. They just can't keep Allen on his feet. Although the running back core looks phenomenal. Devwah Whaley, David Williams, freshman Chase Hayden.
Chase Hayden looked good.
Looked really good. Just was named SEC Freshman of the Week this morning. He outperformed his seniors. 14 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown.
You gotta love it.
Great performance from him. Defense looks improved. Corner Andre Tolliver had a scoop and score in the second quarter, which you always love to see that, even if it's against some lesser opponents. Junior defensive back Ryan Pulley is out for the season with a shoulder injury.
Ouch.
He was great last year. It's a big hit for this defense. Maybe he can get a medical red shirt for a couple more years of eligibility, but freshman Cameron Curl is going to have to play in his place, and he needs to grow up a lot before TCU next week. And
TCU, by the way, looks good.
TCU looks great, like we said they would. It's for Arkansas. They need to fix the pass protection before facing that front seven. TCU's front seven is not necessarily big, but they're very fast, and they can get around linemen. And if we cannot fix this pass protection, then it's going to have issues. Missing Pulley in the pass defense is going to mean trouble against the TCU offense that likes to throw the ball a lot. So having that freshman in there, Cameron Curl at defensive back, is definitely they're gonna target him a lot on some passes. But as far as my prediction for the game goes, I think TCU comes into Fayetteville pretty ready to go. They're going to win a close game over the Hogs, 35-31. I hate to go against my own team, but I just don't think we've got what it takes with that injury and with our pass protection. The defensive pass rush is going to get to Allen. We're not going to be able to run on just a run game. Not going to be able to win the game.
Yeah, it sucks too because I feel like Allen is good when he's comfortable.
Absolutely.
I mean, as with a lot of people, but I just think when he scrambles, he freaks out.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, good week 2 game. We'll have to just wait and see how that one turns out.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good one. I think it's going to be close too. Okay, East, talking about Kentucky and Southern Miss. A Southern Miss team that beat Kentucky last year, 44-35. So the game was at Southern Miss.
All right.
It's a weird.
Yeah, interesting.
Not a normal thing. You could say a lot of things about it being close or whatever, but I mean, Southern Miss never had a lead in the game. I, however, do not think that Kentucky is necessarily better than they were last year when they lost to them, at least on offense. The offense punted 9 times. Benny Snell fumbled. The offense got stopped a lot. Snell went 20 carries for 67 yards, 3.3 yards a carry. Not ideal. Steven Johnson as a quarterback was pretty ineffective, but he did score. He scored 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 in the air. He went 11 for 20 for 176, which isn't bad. He didn't really do a lot on the ground, 5 for 10, 2 yards a carry. I just think, they had some guys step up and make a difference. CJ Conrad did well, 3 for 97 and a touchdown. He had an awesome 59-yard reception. But the defense was the difference. I mean, they still allowed Southern Miss to score some points through the air, as Griggs and Howard, the Southern Miss quarterbacks, combined for 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. They had 2 receivers go over 100 yards. Kentucky was able to shut down the run game pretty well. Southern Miss on the whole averaged 1.4 yards a carry, and they ran the ball a lot. That's on 38 carries.
Wow, that's no good.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Kentucky forced 4 fumbles. Denzel Ware had a really nice looking scoop and score. They had 2 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. Again, Denzel Ware stepped up. He had a sack. He had 1.5 tackles for loss. The defense looked good. The front 7 is what I should say looked good. The secondary didn't look good. I'd like to point out that Kentucky has a defensive player named Courtney Love. Thought that was interesting.
Is it Courtney Love?
Is it her?
Is it her?
There's some pads on.
She's just like, I'm gonna play for Kentucky.
Like, I don't care. I can do whatever.
Yeah.
I was watching the broadcast and I was like, missed tackle by Courtney Love. Anyway, it's kind of dumb.
Well, she needs to do a better job of stopping the pass.
And that's the worst part is Courtney Love, or I guess the best part. He had the most tackles on the team.
That's
on the
great.
day.
That is great.
But they should be fine next week against Eastern Kentucky. I think this game tells Kentucky fans we're not in full crisis mode, but we shouldn't feel great.
Absolutely. Well, it's you can feel good about your front 7 performing like that on the road. But yeah, like you said, secondary's got to tighten up. And so yeah, it'll be a good week too, I think, for them.
Absolutely. I think week 3 against South Carolina, I think Deebo Samuel is going to eat all over this secondary.
Yeah, we might see a little bit of a slaughter right there.
Yeah. All right.
Well, let's talk about Auburn. Auburn wins over Georgia Southern, which is not a bad team
At all.
They went over Georgia Southern 41-7 pretty handily. Jared Stidham could have looked better.
Yeah.
In my opinion, he was a little inconsistent in his first. It's his first start. Took the year off, transfer, learning a new system. Under Gus Malzahn, he's going to ask to be mobile, air the ball out. He went 14 for 24 for 185 yards, threw a pick, 2 touchdowns. It's all right, but for a quarterback that played really well in the Big 12 and is touted like he is, I needed to see better against a Georgia Southern team
who honestly looked a lot worse than they've looked, in my opinion. I mean, I was expecting kind of a fight here, but it was a blowout.
Yeah. Like we said, passing game needs obvious work. The pass protection broke down, but Stidham did a good job staying mobile. You could avoid sacks, which is obviously what you need. The receivers couldn't do a great job of getting open against this G5 secondary, so I think they're going to struggle against a really good Clemson defense next week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how those receivers end up.
I completely forgot that's
they
next
need
week.
They need to do some adjustments over this week to really get ready for that defense. Cam Martin ended up coming in to shoulder most of the carries because Cameron Petway was suspended, and then Kerryon Johnson went out with a hamstring in the second quarter.
Ooh.
So we'll see if they can kind of rehab him and get him ready for Clemson. They're going to need both of those guys. Cam Martin's a great running back, but they're going to need that older guy leadership from Cameron Petway and Kerryon Johnson for
Definitely.
sure.
How long is that Cameron Petway suspension?
I think it's just a game.
Okay,
but we'll have to see. I need to look at it, but I think it's just a game.
It's not like a Florida situation.
I don't think it's a Florida situation.
I meant to mention that about Florida, the fact that those 9 players, including Jordan Scarlett, are still listed under suspension.
Oh yeah. Well, hey, write us in, both Florida and Auburn fans, askthebottlecast@gmail.com. Let us know about your suspended players.
Your hot tips on your guys that aren't playing.
Tell us about them. The defense arguably played the polar opposite. They played a lights-out game. They allowed just 78 yards of total offense. Total offense, 78 yards. That's the lowest, second lowest in Auburn history, actually. So great job on that defense. Need to get the passing game going, though, before they face Clemson, or they're going to get eaten alive by that secondary.
Absolutely.
Like I said. It's going to be a defensive showdown next week in Death Valley. It'll really be up to the offenses of each team to step up, which Clemson has the upper hand, in my opinion, on that thing.
I agree.
In my opinion, Auburn's going to struggle to establish really any consistent offense down there, and they're going to fall to Clemson 24-14.
Well, we're definitely going to see what the defense is made of.
Yeah.
I know Clemson looks strong on offense this week, but it could be interesting.
Yeah. I think they scored in the 50s against their little team.
It was
something. It was great. They put on an offensive clinic. So I think the Tigers have got to get it going before next week.
Yeah. All right. Back to the East. Then we were talking about Vanderbilt and MTSU. MTSU, I want to say, kind of along the lines of some of these other teams, not that bad as of late. They beat Missouri last year.
This game last year was great.
Yeah,
This
it
Vandy
was.
Middle Tennessee game was really good last year.
It was, absolutely. Vandy pulls it out, though, a blowout. Middle Tennessee didn't score until the second half, and this snaps a 5-year opening game losing streak for Vandy, which is huge just in itself. Just for Vanderbilt, just start on the right foot.
That is good for Vanderbilt, good for the team, the fans, great for Derek Mason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say that my takeaway from this is that they needed a win, but they really needed this blowout.
Yeah,
like they needed it to be a complete, hey, we're in the driver's seat the whole game. I mean, there's no, I feel like MTSU is a team that, they've played recently, and like you said, last year, and so they're just good enough, just familiar enough to be kind of a bit of a statement as far as these week 1 games go. The run game wasn't great. Ralph Webb went 24 for 49, a lot of carries, 2.0 yards a carry and 1 touchdown. The team itself averaged 2 yards a carry on the ground. I think their longest run was 9 yards. Webb made up for it as a receiver. He's still the guy, as we were talking about, after all these years. He's still a playmaker.
Still in there, man.
3 catches for 104 yards. Had just an unreal 73-yard receiving touchdown. I mean, he looks fast. He looks good. He's still a playmaker.
Looks like a good decision to move him to wide receiver then.
I know. We had talked. Yeah, right. Absolutely. I was thinking that. I was like, oh, there he goes. Yeah. I see it. And it was Shermer though is the story for me. Shermer and then the defense. But Shermer went 20 for 28, 296 yards, 3 touchdowns. We saw flashes last year. He looks more patient. He looks like he's playing a little smarter, granted against lesser competition, but his touch was nice. The throws really are what I'm looking at. And he looked good right out of the gate, threw a 37-yard rainbow to Kalijah Lipscomb. He spread the ball around, which is great. Something that's good to do. 9 different receivers. I think that's something that Vandy kind of can capitalize on, kind of make their, make sort of a hallmark of their offense this season if that holds up. The defense played well. They just contained. I mean, really great pick by Bryce Lewis off MTSU, or he picked off MTSU on the first drive. MTSU didn't score, like I said, fourth quarter. They shut down the run and the pass. They let loose a couple of big plays late in the game, but I mean, it was so far gone. They had 5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. O-line only allowed 1 sack, 5 tackles for loss. Shout out to junior defensive end Dare Odeyingbo. My sister is a good friend of his.
Connections.
I know.
Hey, tell him to drop our podcast.
He had 2 sacks and 3 tackles for loss, so huge props to him. Dare looked awesome. Junior linebacker Charles Wright also came up big with 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss. You gotta love seeing some Vandy guys just make a lot of big plays.
Yeah, it's
some
good.
Individual effort, really going far.
Absolutely, it's good to see athletes really step up and play well for that team. It always it surprises you, but it shouldn't.
Right.
When you watch them make plays and you're like, Vandy, they have good athletes.
Well,
they have guys that can really play.
And I'm so glad this bolsters kind of what we were talking about in our preview, how they've got the experience. They look good. The recruiting is better, I think, than it's been. Derek Mason has righted the ship, and I really wanted to see it come to fruition. And granted, it's week 1, all the dreams still possible. Yeah. But I think that they look good. I think his vision, at least for the time being, looks like it's where he wants it. He had a great post-game interview. Again, I think they should be fine against Alabama A&M, and I think that they should be fine against KSU. I think as good as Kansas State has been, I think the secondary is good. I think that Shermer he looks good. I mean, he looks he's got a strong arm. I think he's going to keep playing smart. Then after that, it's Alabama at home. Yeah. And I just hope they compete.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd like to see them score a couple times on Alabama. You backtracked a little bit. You talked about Kansas State. I agree with you. This makes me feel a lot more confident in Vanderbilt against Kansas State. Like Ralph Webb really stepping up and being that multi-position guy. If he can get those all-purpose yards against Kansas State, that'll be great for him. Like you said, the defense is looking good. Feel a lot more confident about that moving forward for them.
Absolutely. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Making our way back to the West, just a couple more games to talk about. Let's go ahead and drop right into Mississippi State and Charleston Southern.
Woo.
Mississippi State went 49, Charleston Southern 0. So, real close one.
I just want to say I watched that entire game, first through the fourth. It was a long one.
Did you even watch the whole Georgia game?
I tried. I came in a little late, but it was just already on, but yeah, it was a long game. I liked what I saw. I obviously saw a lot of Mississippi State, but I liked it.
Yeah, well, this is not really going to give us a great idea of what this team is really made of.
No
It's
way.
a Week 1 game against Charleston Southern.
Definitely
You can
not.
say what you want to say, but the offense looks in great shape. 6 total touchdowns, 550 yards of total offense. You can't. You got to love that.
Yep.
But just on the other side of the ball for Charleston Southern, really no offense at all. QB Shane Bouchanel, maybe, was 3 of 8 for 15 yards. That's just abysmal.
Horrible.
Yeah, running back Ronnie Harris ran for 18 yards and 13 carries. Just no sign of life anywhere on that Charleston Southern offense.
I did think Grantham had the defense looking fast. I will say, just
Absolutely.
eyeball test. They looked fast. They looked hungry.
Yeah,
For whatever that's worth.
well, they recorded just 1 sack, but 9 tackles for loss. So they shut down the run game pretty handily. They're going to head to Ruston to play a very underrated Louisiana Tech team, like I was telling you earlier.
Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I think they've been underrated for a while, Louisiana Tech. Week 1 of the last season, they gave Arkansas a run for their money.
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas eked out by just 1 point. This is the team, when I think of teams that's not Houston, who come up from the G5 and really give like a P5 teams their run, it's Louisiana Tech for me.
Wow.
They got a great passing attack, great quarterback. Their defense has always been stout. And it should really be no different this year. So I'm going to really see if Todd Grantham's got them going next week because their offense can be explosive at Louisiana Tech. I think Mississippi State's going to struggle to prevent them from scoring. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I think Nick Fitzgerald's going to get it done with that offense, and they're going to outscore them 45-38. Come away with the win.
All right. I did think Fitzgerald, hope for the best.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that leaves me to the final game on the Eastern side, my personal game of the week. If I could get a drum roll for our man, Butch Jones.
Butch Jones.
Butch Jones. We saw a lot of Butch Jones.
Is that going to be a thing now? Butch
Jones.
That's awful. We need a soundboard.
We do. If you want to, you can always.
Anybody want to donate and get us a soundboard?
I went for it. We saw a lot of Butch Jones last night. It was a very entertaining game. It started slow. It kind of looked like what we predicted for the UT offense a little bit. The first touchdown didn't come until the end of the first, Georgia Tech, but it ended up being just a classic. It ended up being awesome. It's funny, with all the change, all the different players, this is still a second half team with Butch Jones. It's just like he must put it in the water.
Yeah, it's second half juice.
Play hard in the second half. Those halftime speeches must be real.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing. He gets very angry on the sidelines. I can only imagine what he sounds like indoors.
Oh my gosh, you see that red face.
Yeah, it gets real close, and you're like, I gotta score some points.
Like, oh, he's mad. Georgia Tech I thought they dominated until late in the game. I mean, the option Tennessee just could not defend against it.
A lot of people can't.
Yeah, a lot of people can't. I think this is one of those Georgia Tech teams where I think all the pieces are in place and they just do what they do well, really well. That being said, the difference here was turnovers. I mean, Georgia Tech fumbled the ball 3 times. 2 of them were lost to Tennessee. They fumbled in the 4th. That was a huge turnover.
That was a big turnover. I think I actually had texted you about that. I saw that and I was like, this might be Tennessee's chance.
Right.
And you were like, yeah, we'll see what happens. And it ended up being, I think that ended up being the thing that brought them back.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And put them at least in, obviously the field goal was the block.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was really encouraging to see Tennessee turn the ball over 0 times.
That's huge.
I mean, when does that happen?
That's huge, especially with 3 on the other side.
Just less. I mean, there were a lot of missed tackles and, some huge, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but it was nice to see them limit the mistakes, especially on the offensive side. Dormady, I thought, did well. I thought, he's got a strong arm. He went 20 for 37 for 221, 2 scores. Again, no picks. I thought situationally, this is a perfect game for him to play well in. Playing against a good team. I mean, it really bolsters sort of the confidence in him as a starter, especially after, trying to fill Josh Dobbs' shoes. Jawan Jennings and Josh Smith both ended up out for this game. Found out Jennings has a dislocated wrist. He's out for 12 weeks, which is rough.
That's rough.
Silver lining, Marquez Callaway looked fantastic.
Yeah, he did.
4 for 115 and 2 touchdowns. Beautiful corner of the end zone catch. Just a perfect ball from Dormady. He had another great touchdown. I like to see the connection. It's clear that those guys have been putting in the hours together. I thought that, on the ground, Kelly did a really good job filling in for Alvin Kamara and Jalen Hurd. I thought he ran hard. Threw a couple stiff arms. He had some really nice cuts. He went 19 for 128 with 4 touchdowns. O-line looked well. Run blocking was great. No sacks, only 1 tackle for loss the whole game. I really just think both sides of the ball it was just like let them run. Like it didn't even matter. I think that if they can keep that up against stronger front sevens, I think it's going to be a really balanced, nice offense. Again, this was a huge game, for them to play well in. The run defense was horrible. I mean, awful. Isaiah Marshall went 44 carries for 249 yards. It's almost 6 yards a carry. He had 5 rushing touchdowns. Their running back, Gervonta Benson, went 26 for 124, 4 for 8 and a touchdown. I mean, it was just like they could not handle the read option.
It's that read option, man. It kills you.
As lethal as I've ever seen it.
Yeah. It makes you turn the ball over more than you would like to for the 3 turnovers. But, 5 touchdowns for Isaiah Marshall.
Right.
That is, that's read option all in your face.
And it made it so, that it was so... like I said, they just know what they're good at, and they just are executing it just as well as ever. Just the blocking was unbelievable. It was like, you're doomed either way. If Marshall decides to cut in, if he decides to go outside, it didn't even matter. It was like they got you blocked one way, they got you blocked the other. The blocking on Georgia Tech's side was incredible, and it made it just so they could, he only threw it 9 times. Isaiah Marshall did 5 completions for 120 yards, but I felt like they just used the pass, in an intelligent kind of way to where the option made it so they could just pass. And, this is nothing new, like we're talking about. This is just the way Georgia Tech runs. But it was really on display last night. I think Taquan Marshall is we were calling him Isaiah.
Is his name Taquan?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry. Hey, sorry to Taquan Marshall. Yeah,
but Taquan Marshall he's the real deal. He's so good. He's a great football player, really tough. He just is a perfect fit for this offense. I really think that this team, it ended just in such a rough way for Georgia Tech, but, they look really good.
Yeah, they did.
All things considered, they were playing against a weak defense who was missing, guys from last year like Derek Barnett. His presence was certainly missed. They had 2, Darren Kirkland and Austin Smith, 2 starting linebackers, not in this game. Kirkland is out for the season. Austin Smith he was hurt, I believe, in practice last week. No sacks, 1 tackle for loss on the Tennessee side. It's pretty discouraging as a team that's going to have to go against backs, suspension permitting, Jordan Scarlett, Anbo Scarborough, Nick Chubb, Ralph Webb, and Darius Geis on the schedule. They're going to have to stop the run.
Yeah, that's murder's row right there.
And they're different. I know it's different style. It's not going to be these all option teams, but seriously, the front sevens needs work. That was insane. Georgia Tech had the ball for like the whole game, 41 minutes.
That's just a factor of them running the football.
It is just burning clock. Yeah. It's really I'm building this up to say it's incredible that Tennessee won this game.
It is. It really is. It's nothing short. Well, it's just a testament to the team, like you said, a second half team. They were for all accounts out.
Yeah.
At halftime. They were down by a couple scores. Like no sign of the read option letting up.
And then just the fact that it really came down to being a fourth quarter team almost.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
They these late comebacks are interesting, but I don't know if they're sustainable. It came down to special teams. Evan Berry, just like his brother, complete stud, ran back a kick early.
And just
on.
like his brother, I think Evan Berry's got a career in the NFL.
Oh, definitely.
After college.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that on special teams and the block field goal, obviously at the end of regulation, were huge momentum shifts. I think Tennessee did a good job of staying enough in it to really fight when it came down to it. Especially because I talk all this, how great Georgia Tech looked, but I mean, they really just leaned on a couple of guys. I mean, they just leaned on Marshall and and Benson. So when it came down to it, and they were gassed, it kind of forced them to just go for it. I thought the 2-point try was smart enough, but I just thought the play call was bad. I mean, they knew exactly what was going to happen. And when I saw Marshall, I thought he was going to go outside, but he cut in right into a tackler, and then the lateral, and it just, maybe it's dumb. Maybe, I'm certainly no offensive coordinator, but if it were me, I would have thrown a little wrench in there. I would have maybe faked the option, did a little jump pass. Maybe
jump pass
just something,
worked,
right?
Because Tennessee's going to crowd that line.
Absolutely.
We've been seeing the read option all day long.
I mean, lowest man wins, right? So you figure. But I thought, why not just throw a jump pass? Why not do something that you haven't been doing the entire game outside of 9 passes or 10? The backup came in for a second. Anyway, the lateral looked like it was going to be heroic. They just fell a little bit short. I wonder what would have happened if they just kicked the extra point and just seeing who could have pulled it out. But you're on the road. You do what you got to do. UT's going to cruise next week. They've got a goodness. I must have really been confident because I didn't even write down who they're playing. Indiana State.
They're going to be great next week against. Don't matter. They're just going to win.
Indiana State. Then it's Florida, and that's the game every year. Tennessee flans.
Just orange like desserts, just all in this flan
filling up Neyland Stadium. I think that Tennessee. I didn't think going in. We're talking previews that they could beat Florida. Now I do.
Yeah,
I think but it's going to be a defensive test, obviously.
Yeah.
I think it favors Tennessee's defense because they're going up against a lesser offense. We'll see if Scarlett is back. I think Dormady and the offense are going to have to step up, but next week, don't worry about it.
Yeah, with Jawan Jennings being out, we'll have to see again how that receiving core responds.
Yeah,
did a good job against Georgia Tech, but it'll be something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Well, let's knock out one more West game. Last but not least, we have the Ole Miss Rebels against South Alabama. Get the win over South Alabama, 47-27.
Woo!
Yeah. Shea Patterson, we talked a lot about him last week. He gives me no reason to believe he's not just as good as I remember. Mm-hmm. He was responsible for 4 touchdowns on the day, went 28 for 35 for 429 yards, didn't throw a single pick, which is good. That's great performance. Solid. Absolutely. Wide receiver A.J. Brown stepped up in a huge way. He could be the top target for this passing game moving forward. 8 receptions for 233 yards. He basically was the passing game in this game. Absolutely. Like years past, they're going to be looking to lean on the passing game. They threw for 429 yards total, while only rushing for 102. So definitely going to be a pass forward or pass first team. Defense is going to struggle on the whole this year. They allowed 204 yards. Well, I say this year, but I mean it's week 1. But against the South Alabama offense, you have to think that might carry. They allowed 204 yards in the air and 170 on the ground from just a middle of the road South Alabama offense. Mm-hmm. Not really a whole lot of playmakers. They do what they do, but 204 yards in the air and 170 yards on the ground is not great for especially a defense that had touted itself in the past few years as being really good. They play UT Martin in Oxford next week, and if this offense continues to pass the ball like they've been doing, they ought to have no problem against UT Martin, really. Mm-hmm. So I would expect a win from the Rebels next week, which is good for them to start out 2-0. If they do beat UT Martin, you don't want to say that they will, but I think they probably will. That'd be a great start for them and Matt Luke. They're going to need all the wins they can get, I think, to keep the morality up.
You're right. That's all they have at this point, or
really
their record.
Yeah. But yeah, great performance from them. Defense needs to step up, but we'll see what they can do next week.
Good deal, man. Well, that wraps up week 1. I know it was another long episode. It will be nice when we are looking at a lot of SEC on SEC games, so we can sort of spend a little more time.
Absolutely.
But it's fun to see all these teams coming out, other than, tough loss for Florida. a tough loss for A&M. Other than that, everybody is still rocking that 1-0.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, and then for me personally, it just feels good to be back into college football.
Oh, absolutely.
Feels good to be back in. We got week 2 next week. Just love the atmosphere, love watching the games, love talking about them. Hopefully, love hearing from you guys.
Yeah.
Write us in, askthebottlecast@gmail.com. Always, you can keep up with us during the week on Twitter at askdabottle.
Oh, yeah.
That's askda.
We got the gifts. We got the memes.
Absolutely. We got the spicy memes. Lots of retweets from some official athletic programs, so got to get on there and follow that for sure.
Oh, yeah. That's golden retweets.
Yeah, and as always, you can follow us and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud. Mm-hmm. Just search Ask the Bottle.
Yeah.
And there we will be.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. It's been a fun episode. Again, we're really excited about week 2, and it should be fun.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Clint Childers. Sitting across from me is the Georgia Peach himself, Mitch Davis.
Woo!
And we will see you all next week.